And I think the message here is that we have to understand the worlds that our students inhabit. We have to connect with our students, like Professor Sanchez said this afternoon. Arnitha Ball writes about the students, 12% students were African American, her class, whose underachievement goes unnoted. When we add to that 12%, the number of Latina students, the number of Native Americans, the number of Asian students, the number of white vernacular speakers, then that majority, that middle of the class gets smaller. And the students who are in the margins increase in number. And that's why I think this concern I have about broadening our students' awareness of language is so important. Because they're going to have to learn how to work in an environment in the work world where they hear many different varieties of English. And they have to know something about language prejudice. This is reminded of a teacher, and this is something that appeared in the Outcomes book. Donald Wolfe writes a piece in which he discusses his student, who is a non-standard English-speaking student, that he had in a course in academic writing. And he writes about how he kept the student's nose to the grindstone and in the end produced an academic writer, a successful writer, an A writer. And he felt that he had succeeded. That is, until he saw the student sometime later, and she said she appreciated the grade, but hoped she didn't have to write ever again. And this is what he has to say. So what is it about learning to write that makes the student's own language, the student's home language, so important? Zimmerman and Daniels, in their book, A Community of Writers, state that one of the most important elements promoting growth in student writing is the teacher's understanding and appreciation of the basic linguistic competence that students bring with them to school. The social context of the classroom, more important than anything else, he says. Joan Lynn says this about teachers who teach only the privileged dialect, the privileged variety, standard American English. By fostering prejudice, such as language biases, we stifle all students' cognitive development, thinking their language is a superior language which is, after all, what too many teachers teach and too many in society believe. Mainstream students may become incapable of really hearing other cultures and thus learning from them. For as long as mainstream students think that another's language is inferior to theirs, they will probably not bother to understand it, and therefore there will be much about the other they will fail to understand. Another reason why I think home language and accessing that home language is important relates to Britton's theory of writing development. He says all writing begins in this expressive mode as the student is learning to compose. And then it may, through a process, become an expressive piece, such as a piece in which there is a clear presence of the writer. It may become something more audience-centered, transactional piece, an argument perhaps, or it may be something more creative, where the emphasis is on the language. But it all starts here. And many teachers, I think, misrepresent what this is as just writing for the self. So they begin their classes with autobiography or content that they know students have immediate access to. There's less cognitive load, more opportunity for the students to think about how they're going to shape that content. They don't have to go looking for the content. But expressive is much more, I think. That is, I don't think that teachers think about expressive as home language, as natural language. This is what Britton says about expressive. An utterance that stays close to the speaker. An utterance that is most relaxed and intimate, as free as possible from outside demands. And he says, it must be true that until a student does write expressively, he's failing to feed into the writing process the fullness of his linguistic resources. So, the problem is, if you ask students to write using their home language, they don't know what you're talking about. They don't know what you mean, because they're in school. And they do in school writing. They're in that school writing mode. So the teacher really has to work on getting them out of that box, out of the school writing box. And one of the ways that I have found, and I've tried many things, but what I'm going to talk about today is self-directed writing. I have done a lot with essays. I've done a lot with exercises that get them to do things differently, such as writing in fragments. Just composing something in fragments so that it's powerfully written, it's clear, it follows smoothly, but it's all in fragments. And they struggle with that. And many of them, what they will do is they will compose, as they always do in school, and then just arbitrarily create fragments, which of course doesn't work, because there's no rhythm, there's no smooth flow of information. It's very dramatic. Self-directed writing is something a little different. I said to students, and this is 30% of their grade, they get to write on any topic they want, in any style they want, in their home language. It doesn't have to be prose, it can be a cartoon, it can be in any genre. That's why I was interested in what you were saying at Jason's talk with your alternative research paper. It can be a poem in the shape of something, as I've had some students do. But the idea is that they're writing continuously, 2 and 3 a week, writing for themselves. Some of which I won't even see. They'll be in their folder at the end, and if they don't want me to read them, I just ask them to fold them. But they're, for the most part, writing for themselves. And it's writing that also teaches them about the process of writing, because at some point I say to them, okay, you've written 10 pieces of self-directed writing, take one and revise it so that you can share it with other students. And that's the community building part. It's wonderful for when you have a class sharing what interests